Let's start with Kengen. We're seeing the PIBO's impact on the share price currently, but before we get into it, is it an excellent long-term buy?
Kenyan, first of all, because of the sector that it is operating in, is basically a very, very good potential counter. With the Kenyan economy relying currently on 1,000 megawatts of power, we are seeing a lot of potential in that industry, especially because of the 2030 goals. And so being in the energy sector, that's one of the best counters to go for.
And we're looking at a scenario where the offer opens next week. How appealing is it to investors right now?
Well, first of all, we must appreciate maybe the people who are preparing or structuring for that bond, because the 80-20 weighting in favor of institutions look very, very good in terms of being able to look for people who are going to be able to be in it for the long term. But the yield of the bond looks very, very appealing. And so it's more highly likely that's going to be taken up.
All right, and what's the outlook for it going forward?
The outlook for Kengen, maybe over the short term, it might not be performing very well, mainly because of its reliance too much on hydro, mainly because of the current situation that we're having, especially because of the weather in terms of our country. But once it's able to diversify and also go into green energy, we might see it performing excellently well.
Let's move over to Kenyan banks. We're seeing in the second half profit growth is seen as flat to higher, and many analysts are saying most of the banking stocks are overvalued. Which stocks are they referring to here?
Well, most of the counters, yes, they look very, very overvalued, mainly because people have been focusing a lot on the financials, mainly because they are seeing as though they're going to be resilient, especially in this period of recession, mainly because most of the banking institutions are able to handle most of the transactions in terms of salaries, as well as other processing of payments, as well as banking even for people like the government, as well as such other transaction costs. But some of the banks which kind of like look overvalued are things like counters like Equity Bank, which has been performing excellently well historically, but right now the results had not been as appealing, and so we saw that share dipping slightly. But today we saw as though it was turning around, as though investors are beginning to have a bit of optimism on that counter.